Hi, Bob from Pinegrow here. Customizing Bootstrap is normally a bit complicated because it requires setting up the SASS compilation environment, installing Bootstrap SASS sources, and creating a file structure for your custom theme. But with Pinegrow, it's simple. Pinegrow takes care of all of these tasks, and all we have to do is focus on the actual customization. Let's get started. First, create a new Bootstrap 5 project. Either click on the new page or project icon, or go to the file menu and select new page. You can also elect to open an existing project either with the open project icon or again by going to the file menu. Once within this modal, you can select Bootstrap 5 as the framework of choice and then select from any of the different templates. I'm just going to choose pricing. Once your new page is open, you want to convert it to a project. You can do this by going to the file and simply saving. Then Pinegrow will prompt you to open it as a project, so click on yes. Now that we have it opened as a project, we can convert it over to a customizable SASS layout. In order to do this, we simply go to the page menu and select Customize and Update Bootstrap Theme. This will bring up a notification window, and all we have to do is click Sure, let's do it. Once Pinegrow is done, it will pop up another notification window telling you what actually occurred. Let's take a look. First, a new folder was created called Bootstrap_theme. Within that are the Bootstrap SASS files, as well as a new style sheet, custom.scss. This is the sheet where we're going to put all of our changes, and this will be compiled into our final style sheet that adds the styling to the page. This structure is set up in accordance with the official Bootstrap guidelines for customization, and it's important that we maintain this structure. When customizing Bootstrap, it's important to never change the original Bootstrap source files. So you might be asking why. It's because all of our changes would be overwritten if we update Bootstrap in the future. By keeping the structure this way, we can overwrite the files in the bootstrap_theme/bootstrap folder without impacting our custom.scss file containing our customized styling. Now let's look at the Bootstrap variables available to us. To do this, we're going to make sure that we're on the Style panel, and then open up the Style Sheets menu by clicking on the drop-down at the upper right. This will show the structure of all the Bootstrap source files. Don't worry if this looks a little bit scary. We're only interested in two files on the list. One, the _variables.scss file, and two, of course, our custom.scss files where all of our modifications will go. Go ahead and click on the name of the _variables.scss file to open it in a separate tab within the Style panel. In SASS, variables are prefixed with the $sign character. When SASS is compiled into CSS, the compiler will replace the variable names with their values throughout all of our style sheets. Pinegrow has a SASS compiler bundled in, so there's no need to install anything else. A unique feature of using SASS in Pinegrow is that all the changes to SASS files are immediately compiled and shown on the page. No need to save changes first. The Pinegrow design panel actually works with these exact same variables. The design panel allows us to change the values for a number of different variables visually, and we'll take a look at how it works a little bit later. For now, let's just change the color of our links. Looking at the variables.scss file, we can see there are a large number of variables. So how can we find the ones that involve links? The Style panel has a search function to help you find named variables quickly. Just click on the search icon. That'll cause the search bar to appear, and then just add your search term in and a list of possible variables will come up. At the top of our list is a variable called $link-color. It currently has a value of $primary, exclamation point, default. So the first part of this variable, the $primary, sets the value of the $link color variable to the same value as the $primary value. Exit this, look back up, and we can see that primary is set to the value of the blue variable. So if we scroll back up, we can see that the blue variable is set here, is set to this hex color. So you can see the power of SASS, where you can have a single variable like a color that is referenced in multiple places to go ahead and set a color. Okay, now let's go back to changing our link color. So again, I'm going to do a search. And now what we want to do is, remember, we don't want to alter anything in the underscore variables.scss file, because that file will be overwritten in future updates of Bootstrap. So instead, what we're going to do is we are going to right click on the variable. And then we're going to go to this line, customize in, go to the drop down, select custom.scss. Remember, that's where we want to put all our modifications. Click on that. And a lot of people miss this. This is sort of one of those things that you have to use Pinegrow for a little while before you kind of remember this. After you select that, it doesn't automatically cause the copying of the variable. You have to once again click on the customize, and that will now copy it over to our custom.scss file, and it will open another tab up here for displaying that. Okay, so now we have this $link color variable set to the color primary. So one thing right now that happens with Pinegrow is it focuses in on the current variable that you're editing. So sometimes working from this sheet isn't the best way to edit these different things. Sometimes it's better to open it directly in the code editor. So if we go ahead and open that up and we scroll down, we can see that our custom.scss file has a couple of things added to it. So before, it was just this big comment section up here, and then our import statement. Now, in addition to the $link-color variable, two other variables have been copied in, and that's because the compiler is going to assess these sheets in order with our custom.scss file being processed first. Because it's being processed first, it means that all of the values that are in the underscore variables.scss file won't be read by the compiler prior to it compiling this. So in order for this to be valid, a reference to this primary variable, the primary variable has to be there. So Pinegrow handily copied this dependency over for us. So now we have this one on our sheet. $primary is equal to $blue, because $primary is dependent on another variable. That variable has also been copied over. So we also get the $blue that's set to the hex color that we saw before. So now we can go ahead and change the value of the $link color variable in the custom.scss tab or in the code editor. So there's one thing that you might notice if you are looking at this page. It's that these links up here in the menu are black. They're not the expected link color of primary, which is this blue color. And that's because, due to the vagaries of Bootstrap, the classes that you assign to different elements on the page will oftentimes overwrite or overrule other styling that's been added to them at a more base level. And that's the case that's going on here. So let's go ahead and change that back. To do that, I'm going to change to the properties panel. Go ahead and select this. And we can see that there's a class of text-dark. If we remove that, we can now see that this link turns the expected blue color. So let's just go ahead and remove that from each of these. Okay, and now let's go ahead and change our color. So we can do this a couple of different ways. Let's go ahead and instead of referencing another variable, let's just put in our own color. So that's going to give us kind of a brown color. So you can see that even though this is a variable and our style sheet has to be compiled from this particular custom.scss sheet, it immediately changed the color of these up here. So now, of course, until we save this sheet, it's not actually going to keep this color, but you can see how that you can very quickly make tweaks to the color. Now that we have a color in here, we can go ahead and adjust that color any way we want. Okay, so now because we have a hex color used to set our link color, we no longer need those other two variables present within the custom.scss file. And it's probably a good idea to get rid of them since both the blue and the primary are pretty important ones. If we accidentally change them here, we're going to change a lot in our design. So how do we get rid of those? So now if we go back to our styles panel, you can see that our link color changed here. Let's go ahead and change out of that. Let's close this, get rid of this. And then we're going to go ahead and open that again. So now you can see, since we're no longer focused on a particular variable, since we've no longer just imported a variable, it now shows us really this entire sheet. So now we can scroll down. This allows us to do a couple of things without typing. So of course, if we wanted to get rid of these two variables, we could just highlight them and hit delete. The other way you can do it, if you're working just from the style panel, don't feel like opening up the code editor, we can hover over this, go over to the right side, and three different icons show up. The first icon that shows up is this eye icon. If we click on that, that's going to turn that particular variable off. In this case, since we're not using the variable, nothing bad happens. Our links up here retain the same exact features. So we know we can just delete that by clicking on the trash can. Same thing with the blue. If we turn it off, nothing happens. We can delete it. Remember, Pinegrow, when we customized, when we copied the $link-color variable over to our custom.scss file, didn't delete the originals. It only made copies. So even though we deleted them here in our custom.scss, they still exist in the _variables.scss file and are available for all of the other elements on the page that use those two particular variables. But here we didn't need them, so we could get rid of them. Okay, so we just saw how to get rid of variables. We just looked at how we can copy variables. How can we add a new variable? So, maybe there's some particular shade of pink that we need or something like that, and we'd like to add it as a color. So we can do that either through the code editor by, simply typing it here, or we can do it here in the style panel. If we just hover after the rule, this orange line shows up with a plus. Click on that. Can then type whatever particular variable we want. Remember, we have to prefix it with a $. So let's say violet. Then you hit tab. And now you can go ahead and put the desired value you want in. So, I don't know what violet is. Let's call it something with some good red. So let's say AA. And maybe some blue. Let's go with no green and equal amount of blue. Okay, so we got sort of a violet color there. And then now we can go ahead and use that variable any place we want. Remember that if we wanted to use this violet color in the link color, it wouldn't work as it's written right now. And that's because this variable is coming after the $link-color variable. And so it's not this violet won't be defined yet. So what we can do if we did want to use it for the link color, we can again hover over this at the right side. And these two sets of three dots here are a drag handle. All we do is click and drag on that, and we can reorder the order of our variables. Now at this point, I can click there and change this to violet. And you can see up here, it compiled instantly and used our new violet color. So now we need to go back to something that I referenced briefly before, but didn't really explain within the underscore variables.scss sheet. So if we just switch back to that, remember that when we copied our $link color variable over, it had a value. And then following that value was an exclamation default. And I didn't really explain what that meant. So in SASS, if a particular variable is assigned a value followed by this exclamation default, it basically tells the compiler to only assign this variable, in this case, this hex color, to the $blue variable if that variable isn't already assigned a value. So in this way, it works sort of the opposite of a CSS cascade where the last rule wins. In this case, the very first time blue is defined will be used as the value if any subsequent definitions of this variable have this exclamation default. So this can have some important implications for our file sheet. So if you copy a variable over from this, basically the style sheets will be loaded in this order. So that means anything defined in the custom.scss file, any variable, will override any of the bootstrap.scss variables if they are also defined as a default. And you'll find that most of them are. So back in our custom, that means that if violet is defined somewhere within the Bootstrap CSS and SASS files, if it's declared as default, this violet will override that particular violet. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, that sometimes when you're defining these values up here, you can accidentally cause unintended changes throughout your theme. So you have to be a little bit careful about your declaration names. Your variable names. On the other hand, you can also take advantage of this to be able to make core changes to your theme from within the custom.scss file. And that's indeed what the design panel does. Those values that it gives, or variables it gives values to, are actually declared within the Bootstrap SASS files as default. And so the variables defined in the custom.scss overwrite the values that are later in the document. Finding and changing the link color was fairly easy. We guessed what the variable name should be and then used the Pinegrow search box. Sometimes, however, the variable name won't be as clear and it won't be as easy to guess what it should be. Luckily, the Active tab in the Style panel not only displays active CSS rules, it also presents the underlying SASS code. So if we switch back, can see that there's a grayed out link here that says show 3 more rules from custom SCSS. Click on that and we can see some other rules going on. So right now we've got for the color, we can see that we're using the $link color. And remember, that's the variable that we changed within our custom SCSS file to give this violet color. So if we look at something else, say this H1, we can see if we scroll down that, for example, the color of that is set through the headings-color variable. Let's go ahead and do that, headings-color. So we're going to go into this sheet. Click on the search icon. Oops. So the headings.color right now has a value of null, and this is the default. So again, if it isn't defined someplace else, it's assigned a value of null, which means it will take the color of the parent element, in this case, black. So again, right click, go to our customize dropdown, choose our custom.scss, click customize. It will copy it over. And remember, since we're focused on this particular one, it doesn't show us the others. So we can then go ahead and open our custom.scss file here, and then go ahead. We can see it. It's copied here. Why not? Let's just make that violet as well. And you can see that it's a slightly different color, and that's because I forgot to put the $sign. Okay, so now we have our heading color as violet. And we can see that the headings color is used quite a bit throughout this theme. So every place where that variable is used, it'll now substitute in that violet color that we defined here in our custom.scss file. Before moving on to the design panel, let's take a look at one other way that we can use the Active tab in the Style Sheets panel to find what particular variables are causing a particular CSS feature. So remember that I showed you if you select the link and then select to display all of the Bootstrap values, we can see that the link color is here. So another thing that we can do in the style panel is we can elect to turn on a pseudo class. So in this case, hover. And what that's going to do is it's now going to show us all the rules that are active if we are hovering over the feature. And we can see that it exposes some new variables. For example, link-hover-color. So now if we wanted this to change color when we hovered over it, change to a specific color that's specific to our theme, we could do the same thing that we did for our other two variables we altered. We could either customize this, copy it over from our variables file into our custom.scss, or we could simply type this variable name in and give it some type of value. And so I'm not going to go through that, but that's another thing to keep in mind, that you can use your pseudo classes up here to be able to display other variables that you can't get at easily through a simple search necessarily. The design panel provides a simple interface for assigning new values to a number of typical SASS variables. This includes the core Bootstrap colors and various font variables. While you can alter these manually, it's much easier to use the design panel and avoid potential typographical errors. To activate the design panel, first switch to the design panel tab and then click on the activate button. Activating the design panel will convert your project to using SASS if you haven't already turned this feature on. It then copies 21 variables from the _variables.scss sheet into the custom.scss file. Additional variables are copied for adding and changing fonts. You can examine the color variables added just by opening the custom SCSS file in the editor panel down here. And again, all you have to do is click on it to open it. Scroll to the top, and we can see that there's now values defined for the primary, secondary, info, success, warning, danger, white, light, and dark variables. So all of these that are included up here. And anytime you change any of these, so for example, if we want to change the primary to something more close to our violet, we can see now that the primary value has been changed down here to have a value of the hex color that we selected up here. So that's exactly what we were doing when we went ahead and customized these in our custom.scss by copying them over from the underscore variables. We're just giving them a value that overwrites the value that's contained within the Bootstrap SASS files. There's also a number of other variables in here for border radius and shadows. That's located down here in the Bootstrap options. Most of the typographical things, except for, I believe, the headings, are going to be contained within actual just plain CSS. So I just turned on headings to use impact. And we can see that here now there's a new variable added in, headings-font-family impact charcoal sans serif. And that's, again, copied over from that underscore variables.scss file. So one thing that's important, when you use the design panel and you also want to add your own custom variables or changes to variables within the Bootstrap SASS files that aren't included within the design panel, just be careful not to change anything within the commented out section where Pinegrow has added. So you can see here there's a comment, Pinegrow generated theme init begin. And if you scroll down, you can see Pinegrow generated theme init end. These all come from when we converted our project over to a SASS file. Makes it easy to quickly uncomment these without having to copy them over. And then in addition, sometimes there will be another section at the bottom commented out, Pinegrow generated additional rules begin. Again, don't change anything within this section. Try and put your custom CSS rules here. Try and put your custom variables up here. And always remember your custom variables have to come before any time when you're using them, for example, in your custom CSS rules. So far we've given examples of creating a Bootstrap SASS custom theme from scratch and using the design panel. However, Pinegrow also allows you to add and modify custom themes, for example, created by other designers to your pages. In this case, instead of using the Page, Customize and Update Bootstrap menu, instead, we're going to tell Pinegrow where it can find the SASS sources to be used. And we can do this by opening the Page Manage Style Sets menu item. So that's right here, Page Manage Style Sheets. And so from there, we can, if we wanted to, create a new file. So we of course have to then attach it to the sheet. And then we can convert this to using SASS by clicking on the Use SCSS/less. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to have to add in the URL of the file that will be compiled to make this file. Right now, we don't have one. So what we could do instead is go back here. We can add a new or create a new file. So I right-clicked on the theme name, click on Create New File, and then we can give it something like create that file. Now when we go back into the Page Manage Style Sheets, we can then say use this, and then we can browse and say use our new _theme.scss. Open that and click use. So now anything we add to this new _theme.scss would compile to our new theme.css file. And so basically what we can do is create this new _theme.css file, attach it to our page, and then for the source file, instead point to, for example, a file of SASS that we downloaded from the internet that was put together by another designer. Pinegrow will then take and, just like it compiled the Bootstrap SASS files, compile that source file and put the result into the new _theme.css file. And so that's it. Hopefully this brief introduction to customizing your Bootstrap 5 theme has answered the majority of your questions. We're always working on making Bootstrap customization more comprehensive, easier, and smarter, so stay in touch. If you have any additional questions, please reach out to us on our forum at https://forum.pinegrow.com or email support@pinegrow.com. We look forward to hearing from you.